Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear students, dear friends, please permit me first to thank the organizers of this event for their kind invitation, and then all of you for being present here at the European School Brussels 3 or on your screens somewhere else. What makes us human? The question of a better understanding of the human beings and the world had been the initial motivation for the beginning of my philosophy studies many years ago, and remained at the heart of the research I've led since. But may I say that I arrived today at a satisfactory answer? I'm not certain. The subject is too complex. Although many important philosophers expressed various theories, they remain still under discussion, and more aspects have yet to be examined. At the dawn of Western philosophy, the seven sages gave the advice, know thyself. But Thales, to whom this Delphic precept was attributed, added that this was the most difficult task among all. Since then, that major existential question attracted the attention of many philosophers, and I will just cite as a simple example the Renaissance humanism, Immanuel Kant, or Friedrich Nietzsche. Even if I agree more with certain ideas expressed by some thinkers, less with others, and I try to construct my own, I continue to seek my way through all this, as there are always new elements that can be eventually taken under consideration. So, I shall just try to share with you briefly here some selective main points that I think are crucial for the subject. I shall examine the question essentially from two aspects, depending on the meaning that we can attribute to the keyword human. First, the term human can be understood ontologically. Then the question should be reformed: which are the characteristics that are particular to human beings? Secondly, the notion human may take an ethical sense, referring to the acquisition of some virtues or values, or the realization of actions that we consider proper to morally excellent people. And then the question should be reformed: what makes us outstandingly human? First, the ontological aspect. The characteristics composing the human nature or essence may be defined in various manners. And not only our personal philosophical options, but also our cultural background may have a decisive influence on this, as was already pointed out during the Davos disputation between Ernst Cassirer and Martin Heidegger. Human beings constitute the species Homo sapiens. Perhaps that's why, for the representatives of Western philosophy up to now, the most current answer to the question, what makes us human, was our intellect. As, for example, René Descartes' famous citation, I think, therefore I am, cogito ergo sum. However, on one hand, recent research proved that different animals, like primates, dolphins, elephants, may also possess intelligence at important levels. On the other hand, man created intelligent machines, which even surpass the rapidity and the precision of human reasoning and advance every day towards a greater independence in their function. In consequence, it becomes necessary to rethink and redefine our human identity. It is essential then, in my opinion, to take under consideration the following points. I think that it isn't just our intelligence, but more the way to use it that characterizes us. Man wishes always to learn more about everything, as Aristotle already pointed out. The notion of philosophy, philosophia, is significant. It is the love of wisdom which constitutes an unending and constant strife. We are open to imagination and creativity, for original achievements of all kinds, as we can see always new inventions in arts, science, technology. We are a homo faber. Henri Bergson constituted there the main difference between man, created of multiple artifacts, and human animals. Whereas Arnold Gehlen thought that man produces an artificial environment because of his deficit to adapt to the natural one, so he saw it negatively. As far as we know, we are the only species on Earth that presents an aesthetic sensibility, enjoying the pleasure procured by beauty and the various artistic creations. We are a Homo aestheticus, which recently Luc Ferry analyzed by putting the aesthetic taste in relation to ethics and politics. Also, as far as we know, we are the only species presenting spirituality. This is a very difficult notion to define. But let us say, very generally, that many humans, from the prehistoric times till now, according to archaeological data, believe in the coexistence of a supranatural world in parallel to the natural one, and of superhuman entities in connection with men, who become then Homo religiosus. The various religions and spiritualities give different definitions of the nature of these or these entities and of our communication with them. The dualist vision of human nature shares with many religious beliefs the idea of the existence of a human immaterial soul, different from the body, and attached to it during one or more terrestrial lives. Many among the persons who adopt religious beliefs consider the human nature defined by one or more divine entities. Some of them accept also a certain form of determinism concerning our actions. They would be guided by a divine will to which we are submitted. Curiously enough, the adepts of a materialist monism, who believe that human nature is essentially corporeal, join them in a different sort of determinism. They consider that humans are absolutely defined by their physiology, their psychological constitution, or the social and historical conditions in which they live. At their antipodes, we find the existentialism of Jean-Paul Sartre. For him, man is thrown into existence by chance, and therefore is condemned to be free, to define himself, and to assume alone the choice and the responsibility of his actions. In spite of all the evident limits and variable influences resulting from the temporal and material parameters of our life related to our body or to our environment, I think that we are also characterized by the liberty to act in different degrees, that we are a homo liber. Eventually, we can go towards the best or the worst possible way, even if the total liberty of auto-definition of each human being might be too exaggerated. In our free will resides our moral responsibility, our being a homo ethicus, which we don't expect from other species. And every one of us is an unpredictable and unique person. We usually pursue what we believe is the best. We strive for excellence. Sometimes this we consider is material goods or power, being a homo economicus. Sometimes we try to become a better person, as the ancient Greek philosophers incited us to do, considering that wisdom and the other virtues are constitutive of felicity, eudaimonia, or good life, ephsin, which for them is our greatest good and man's natural finality. Thomas Hobbes believed that man is a wolf to man, homo homini lupus, and that the perpetual war among us is our natural state. Quite on the contrary, Baruch Spinoza said, no, man is a god to man, homo homini deus, but when he uses his rationality as a guide for his behavior. In fact, in my sense, both can be right. As up to now, humans proved to be open to a double attitude. We combine at different levels individuality on one hand and cooperation with members of our community on the other. This gives, as a result, a vast range of attitudes, from absolute egoism to extreme altruism. We also present a vision of universality concerning the groups we consider we belong in, like cosmopolis, humanity, all sentient beings on earth. We are a homo universalis, and the Stoics and Immanuel Kant insisted on our cosmopolitanism. And I pass to the second aspect, the ethical one, being human. One might expect that to earn the ethical qualification of human, one should develop all the above-mentioned characteristics to an excellent degree. Nevertheless, we usually attribute this term to persons who show a high level of empathy, benevolence, solidarity, and support towards the others. On the contrary, we call someone who lacks compassion inhuman. We may say then that a person is qualified by humanity when he adopts philanthropy, philanthropia. That means who loves humans and expresses it in concrete and stable ways. You can ask me, how can one arrive at becoming human in this sense? Because we're, as we said, constantly divided between egoism and altruism, individualism and collectivism, the instinct of preserving ourselves, and the necessity to belong to a group, as a political animal, which Aristotle already pointed out. Perhaps the key to affront is the achievement of an equilibrium. A harmonious composition of these opposite forces, which could satisfy both needs at the same time. Perhaps we could go back to the ancient sages to seek help and advice for the realization of this harmony. There are two other important Delphic precepts, well known. Measure is the best thing, metron Aristotle, and nothing in excess, miden agan. Perhaps we may try to put the necessary limits to our selfishness, our greed, our aggressivity, in view of developing not only a cooperative attitude towards the persons who surround us, our family, our neighbors, our colleagues, our fellow citizens, but also a sense of being part of the humankind as a whole. This is also the spirit of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, aiming at peace and mutual respect among all people, a text signed officially by the majority of states, but unfortunately not yet applied enough. Anyway, in our era of globalization, it is impossible to imagine that we may remain isolated. We all receive, at a greater or lesser degree, the consequences of what is happening to others, even if they live in the most distant parts of the world. This may include, for example, disasters created by men, like wars, which is an extreme expression of some people's inhuman, egocentric avidity for gain and power, deprived of any respect due to other persons, or by natural causes, which sometimes are caused also by human interventions. Therefore, to show in concrete actions our goodwill towards the others, we should be able to put ourselves in the place of everyone else and try to help for the amelioration of his life. In practice, this would mean to give a hand to the elderly person next door, to support the work of NGOs, to try to influence our governments to avoid armed conflicts, and if they occur, to provide help to the people who may be touched by them, or to promote political coalitions among states like the European Union or the United Nations. And I'm sure you can add an infinite number of examples to the list. Now, if I had given this lecture 50 years ago, perhaps I would have concluded here, because probably the transcendence of the barriers of the self, in view of developing a feeling of unity among all humans, could suffice to lead us to become ethically human. But in the 20th century, we began to see the enormous threats of our technological developments in ways that we didn't imagine before. Already at that time, Hans Jonas proposed to revise Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative in this way: act in such a way that the results of your action can be compatible with the permanence of an authentically human life on Earth. Unfortunately, his voice wasn't heard as it should. We become actually more and more conscious of the disastrous effects on nature because of man's inconsiderate use of resources and interventions to the environment. In his relations not only with other humans, but also with the other species and nature, man adopted too often an egocentric, dominating, covetous, and disrespectful attitude. However, we cannot close our eyes anymore to the undeniable huge negative results of our own actions on us too. If one wishes then to be ethically human, caring for the continuation of a decent life for humankind in the near future and for the generations to come, the situation demands now a second transcendence over the limits of the human space. It is extremely important, I think, to consider ourselves also as a constitutive part of the Earth's ecosystems. We have to find a harmonious coexistence with the other living beings and to contribute to the best possible long-term function of the planet that is our common home. Perhaps we can remember that the first Western thinkers were called natural philosophers. They wished to explore prioritarily the world, which they called cosmos. That means an ornament of perfect beauty. Not just to justify their intellectual curiosity, but also to achieve a better understanding of the place and the role of humankind within this harmonious structure. The contemporary philosophers propose various ways to assume this attitude, and I will just cite briefly ecological humanism or the distinction between shallow and deep ecology realized already by Arne Naes in 1973. Some may justly remark, man has committed up to now many fatal errors in his behavior towards the environment as well as towards his fellow humans, bringing up terrible catastrophes, a number of which irreversible. I admit that this is true. But here comes another characteristic proper to humans: making mistakes. Errare humanum est, as says the proverb. And this weakness may be counterbalanced by the intelligent use of our qualities. The most important is first to become conscious of our erroneous beliefs, thoughts, actions, by applying the self-knowledge we were talking about. And if we need to arrive at the best possible condition, we may use our natural aptitude to invent solutions to affront the situation and bring an amelioration to our actual problems. It is also useful to develop exchanges and cooperations in view of more successful achievement of our common goals. Of course, even if we manage at a certain future date to realize approximately the desired harmony among ourselves, the other people, all living beings, and the whole nature, this could not be a state established once and for all, but a constant, everyday effort to be applied by each person in the way and the degree he freely wishes and can contribute to it. And this implies an appropriate lifelong education and practice. Can this be possible? You may ask, or you are just presenting utopias in front of our eyes. Well, it certainly cannot be easy. But I think that it's worth at least to start trying, as not only our ethical qualification of being human, but also the quality of our lives and even our existence as human beings cohabiting with the other species on Earth depend on it. But from now on, the most important is what you think and what you will do. Thank you very much for your attention.